Arsenal suffer defeat out in Hong Kong at the hands of their rivals Tottenham Hotspur. There's going to be a meltdown online. There always is. Is it justified, or is it just a pre-season game that we have to very, very quickly put out of our minds? I'm not sure. I'm struggling to process the emotions right now because we're recording this, 15, 20 minutes after the full-time whistle. I'm sure I'll look at it differently tomorrow and we'll come back to it and touch on it a bit more in tomorrow's pod. But for now, here's my instant reaction. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how are we doing? Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host Harry Symeou, here to react to Arsenal's defeat out in Hong Kong at the Kai Tak Stadium, where we were beaten by 1-0 by our rivals Tottenham Hotspur. That's why it hurts. You know, normally you lose a pre-season game, you don't really care too much, and you're looking for the performance, you're looking for bright sparks, you're looking for signs of what's to come in the new season. And I have to say, the signs weren't great today. Obviously, when you play against Tottenham, it means something. Like, regardless of the context of the game and regardless of the fact that it's a pre-season friendly, it means something because it's them. And that, as an Arsenal fan, is something you're never going to be able to kind of get around. I think, you know, you'll get over it much quicker, given the circumstances, than you would losing in a normal North London derby on your own patch, or whatever, a competitive North London derby on your own patch. But that doesn't mean people don't have a right to feel a little bit underwhelmed by what they saw and a little bit disappointed by the overall performance. We're going to break it down. We're going to analyze what we witnessed. I think if I do sort of top line stuff first and then sort of drill down into some of the aspects of the performance, I think it's fair to say that Arsenal looked disjointed, that they lacked rhythm, that they lacked tempo, that they lacked an intensity. And I expect performances at this stage of the season to be patchy, or of pre-season, I should say, to be patchy, because, you know, you're still building up your fitness levels. You're still finding your feet when you've got new players in the mix as well that are probably trying to get to grips with their new teammates and different habits and, you know, a different style of play, different coaching instructions, etc., etc. You're going to get that disconnect at points and at times. So, you know, I wasn't expecting Arsenal to go out today and put in a top-tier performance for the entire duration of the game. As I say, I expect performances at this stage to be patchy. But I think supporters will be concerned by a few things that, unfortunately, have left a bit of a scar from last season, right? So you're going to be concerned by the lack of ideas around the opposition penalty box. You're going to be concerned by how ineffective Arsenal looked in attack today. It felt like in the early stages of the game, Arsenal were trying to go in behind and trying to be a little bit more direct in their approach, but Spurs kept catching us out with the offside trap that worked really, really well. Now, maybe sharper, fitter, and more in tune Arsenal players make that work better, because perhaps when you're at sort of peak concentration and fitness levels probably being the more important factor here, you probably don't get caught offside. You're probably not, you know, that half a yard behind in terms of getting into the right position for when the ball is released and played towards you. So, you know, maybe that makes a difference, but it just felt like, you know, after the first sort of early period of the game where we did that quite a bit and we managed to force a few corners and we had a few blocked shots, it just felt like after that we kind of went, well, what do we do from here? How do we approach this from now on? How do we unlock this Tottenham Hotspur defense? I think Mikel Arteta left the changes really late as well, which surprised me, because in these games, often you see changes made, don't you, around about the kind of, well, you see a lot at half time, usually. Sometimes you see them at around about 60 minutes. Felt like we took a little bit too long to kind of change it up a little bit. And I think there was one area specifically where we needed to change it up a lot earlier, and we just didn't do it. And for me, that area was the midfield. I don't want to draw too many conclusions based on preseason, but I said when we signed him that I wasn't sure that the Norgaard-Rice dynamic was going to work. And that's not because I want to sit here and criticize either one of them as individual players. They've both got a lot going for them. You know, obviously Declan Rice is on another level, but Christian Norgaard can be a very useful addition to this squad, and I'm sure in time will prove himself to be. I remember feeling this way about Mikel Merino when we first signed him. I was kind of like, well, it looks a bit clunky. It's going to be committed, of course. He's going to give it his absolute all, but does he have that technical level that we need? Does he have that intelligence that we need? Does he have that kind of X factor that we're after? And I know that people will argue that Norgaard's been brought in as a sort of backup player and someone that probably won't start when everybody's fit and available, but you still want to see a bit of that, don't you? You want to see a bit of something that's kind of convinced your club to go out and sign him. So again, it's not about the individuals. Let me just make that clear. But the balance in the midfield with Norgaard at the 6 and Rice as one of the 8s is off. It is off. And I thought it would be off in terms of when I sort of theoretically analyzed it in my mind. And I watched it today and it was off. So I now feel more confident in that opinion and in that belief. The problem when you have a midfield like that of Norgaard and Rice, two players who aren't, I would say, the most creative of passers. I certainly think in Declan Rice's case, he's not that tempo rhythm setter that people maybe thought he might be when he came in. He was that destroyer type defensive midfielder who's been pushed on to play in more advanced areas, who uses his athleticism and his power and some of the other brilliant attributes that he has. And I think has shown himself to be more effective to us in a slightly different role. But he's not a tempo setter. Again, not criticizing the player because I really like him. I really like Christian Norgaard as well. But what you've got is two players who have skill sets that don't necessarily complement each other. And when 2/3 of your midfield does not complement each other, you have a problem. We talked a lot last season about there being this over-reliance on Martin Odegaard for creativity. And we hoped that with the business that we've done this summer and still hope to do, fingers crossed, we get Eberechi Eze in as well, we'll be taking some of that burden away from Martin Odegaard, sharing that creative responsibility. Can Nwaneri take on some of that? Can Max Dowman, who was probably the only bright spark again today, can he take on some of that burden? Can Noni Madueke? Can Leandro Trossard? Can Kai Havertz, if he's not playing at centre forward? Can Victor Gyökeres bring us something? That's the hope, right? But in today's case and in today's instance, you had Martin Odegaard again being almost solely responsible for creating from Arsenal's midfield. And that, I think, has given people, sort of flashbacks to some of the problematic games we had last season. And that's why the reaction around this is going to be quite strong. Zubimendi, I thought, made a difference when he came on in terms of just giving us that bit more control. And there was a bit more rhythm to our game, wasn't there? Because he is that metronome in the midfield that you can sort of play through and make things happen through. I understand, as I say, people's frustration because, as I said at the top, against Tottenham, friendly or not, it matters to a degree. Obviously, we're talking about the attack being a little bit blunt, and we'll come on to some individuals that, maybe underperformed and some others that, should be available to us or would be available to us ideally, but aren't at the moment, and the impact that we hope that they will make. But defensively, we weren't great today either. And not so much from open play. I thought from open play, we were all right, to be honest. There was a few moments that Tottenham created. There was a couple of instances where they really sort of utilised Odegaard's pace down the left-hand side. But it was the set-piece defending for me that was really concerning. Tottenham have obviously been working on set pieces under Thomas Frank, and that's made a big difference already. You can see it. It's in complete contrast to Ange Postecoglou, who said, I don't do set pieces, mate, or whatever it was that he said. This is a manager in Thomas Frank who's very, very, thorough in everything that he does. His attention to detail is phenomenal, and it's why he was able to bring Brentford to the Premier League and keep their heads above water despite having a low budget in comparison to everybody else, despite being arguably the smallest club in the division in terms of fan base. He did a fantastic job, right? He's done a fantastic job there. And I think he'll probably do a quite good job at Tottenham as well. And you could already see, their defensive structure was better. They frustrated us a lot easier than Ange Postecoglou's side would have ever done. But they'd obviously made some changes and some tweaks to the way that they were going to deliver their set pieces. And it felt like they were using today to test something out. And we never responded to it. And that's frustrating because we're supposed to be the set piece team. We're supposed to be the team that put all the focus on the detail around those set pieces. And after the first one, where it was whipped into our penalty area, the ball bounced inside our 6-yard box and come off of the far post, you'd have thought we'd have been wiser to the fact that Tottenham were going to try that again and were going to cause us problems with that on multiple occasions. Now, some people will say, well, what's the set piece coach doing? Listen, in an in-game situation, I'm not looking at the set piece coach. I'm looking at the players on the pitch to take leadership, to take control of the situation and say, we got to be alert to this. After the first time, when we got away with it, when it came in, bounced in the middle of the 6-yard box and hit the far post and came out to Richarlison, who couldn't obviously find the back of the net, we should have been aware to the type of deliveries that we were going to be facing. Now, Tottenham could have changed it up. I'm sure they've got more than one set piece routine in the locker, but we should have been aware of that, and we weren't. It happened again. It's time from the other side, and Richarlison again very nearly opened the scoring for Tottenham. So I'm not going to sit and have a go at Nicolas Jova because this is in-game stuff, but it's where I want our leaders on the pitch to go after the first one when we're preparing to defend another corner. Switch on, be alert to that, be aware that could happen again, and we weren't. Again, we had no one on the far post. Again, we got away with it by the skin of our teeth. So that was frustrating for me. But obviously my main concerns and my main takeaways from today's game, they're to do with us in the attacking third. Now, I feel like I've got to caveat everything I say with this because there will be people that will take this as a huge overreaction. It's not. And by tomorrow, I'll be over this. Okay? But you can't help when you play Tottenham and lose, feel disappointed and frustrated. And if we didn't analyze the game for what it was, which was a really disjointed and I would say poor Arsenal performance, where we lost to a Spurs side that never had to really come out of second gear, then I wouldn't be doing my job properly. I wouldn't be analyzing the game fairly. So I want to make sure that I do that. But that doesn't mean I'm sitting here tomorrow saying sack the manager, or the signings that we've made are all crap and useless and you need to get rid of them, or that we need to still bring in 4 or 5 players in the transfer window. No, I'll be realistic in my wider outlook. But this is us focusing on this game in isolation, and it's impossible to be happy or satisfied with what we've just seen. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres wasn't ready to really have an impact, and I think I felt it during the watch-along that we did on the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel. I felt that there was a frustration brewing and building among the Arsenal supporters with relation to Kai Havertz's performance. It felt to me like Kai Havertz was a little bit rusty today. And listen, people, were sort of expecting him to put in this tip-top performance. I think you were a little bit misguided because no one did. No one put in a top performance. No one looked 100% at it. That's in part what pre-season's about. But I think where we need to give Kai Havertz a bit of leeway is that this guy was injured at the back end of last season quite severely and only returned for the last 3-4 games, if that, at the back end of last season, in which he played cameo roles. So he's still finding his feet. He's still finding his rhythm. He's still finding his way back to his best. And I don't really understand why there are so many people out there that want to really kind of stick the boot in on him. Was he good enough today? No. But we've signed Victor Gyökeres, and it's only because Victor Gyökeres isn't ready yet that Kai Havertz is playing at number 9. If we start the season, Victor Gyökeres gets up to speed, Havertz continues to play at 9 and continues to underwhelm, and people want to be frustrated by that, fine. But come on, let's zoom out and have a look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that Gyökeres is not ready yet. Noni Madueke, who we brought in to bring some spontaneity and creativity and dribbling ability to that final third, he's not available. He's been at the Club World Cup. He needs a holiday, for God's sake. We still need another one in attack, in my opinion. Eberechi Eze is that guy for me. We haven't got that done yet, so we can't talk about players in the context of match situations when we don't even have them yet. But I think my biggest frustration was not necessarily what I saw from Havertz or any of the other players in those central or right-sided areas. It's probably from the left. Because again, I felt we lacked threat from that left-hand side. And I want to defend Gabriel Martinelli because I really like him. I really do. There's so many things to like about the guy. He's got so many kind of admirable qualities. But he's not effective enough from that left-hand side. He doesn't make things happen. He is a little bit one-dimensional in the way that he looks to make things happen. It's often receive the ball, stand up the defender, and then try and knock it past him and see if you can get by him. But fullbacks are a different breed these days, man. They're big, they're strong, they're powerful. And if they're switched on, he's not having anywhere near the joy that he did in the earlier stages of his career. Now, I don't know what that is. Is it a regression on Martinelli's part? Is it an improvement in the defensive sort of units that we're facing? Is it just that, when you're playing a low block, even if you get past the first one, or playing against the low block, I should say, when you get past the first one, you're probably going to be faced with a second player. And we're just not seeing Martinelli kind of figure it out and suss it out, or varying his game enough to have that impact that we want him to have. So he's the one that I think people are going to come away from the game really looking at. And obviously that opinion and narrative will be fueled by the fact that we've heard lots about Arsenal being linked with left wingers this summer. I think the general consensus is that we've got two good players in Martinelli and Leandro Trossard, but we could do better. And as fans, you always want more. You always want better. So I get it. I get the frustration. I thought Odegaard at times today tried to make things happen, but something's missing with him still. Where I will give him a tiny, weeny bit of credit today was that when he got the ball on the edge of the box on multiple occasions, he did adopt that whole kind of shoot on sight policy, something that we've said he's probably not done enough of in recent times. So at least he's trying and looking to make things happen, but it's just not really working for him either, is it? I do want to focus on the goal, finally. It's not going to be the longest episode today. I don't see the need to kind of really dig too deep into a preseason friendly. I think, you want to see, as I said already, glimpses of positives, and you want to see things that you think, oh, that's interesting, and you want to have talking points off the back of that. I don't think there are that many based on today's game, because I think ultimately we saw a lot of the same issues that we experienced last season. That contributes to the frustration, but it also means that for me, there's not really that much to unpack and analyze here. But I think the goal was interesting because during the watch along that we did, I could see in the live chat that there was a mixture of opinions with regards to who was responsible and who was culpable for that goal. I think initially when I saw it play out in real time, I was kind of like, Miles, what are you doing? You've turned into trouble. You've been a little bit overconfident there. You've tried to dribble your way through a really difficult situation, and you've ended up losing the ball in a dangerous area when we are vulnerable as a team in terms of our shape. Then I watched it a second time and I was like, well, David, why are you giving him the ball there? Why is David Raya playing him the ball in that situation? And I always think the goalkeeper has a greater responsibility to play the right pass than the defender does to kind of have, or than the defender does to turn the right way, because the goalkeeper can see the game unfolding in front of him. So there was a part of me that was like, David, what are you doing? And we saw that on occasion last season as well, where, in my opinion, David Raya is playing hospital passes to defenders who are then just turning in the wrong direction, getting pickpocketed and putting Arsenal in a horrible, horrible situation. I did, in the watch along, give praise to Pape Matar Sarr, because that is one hell of a finish. And to have the energy to burst into that challenge from a deeper line as he was, win the ball back, and then have the quick thinking to spot where David Raya is, and then the technique to execute that. It's a really, really good goal. Take nothing away from him. But obviously, having seen a couple of replays, I think it became quite clear that Miles Lewis-Skelly was fouled by Richarlison. He was clipped, which sent him down. And so in a competitive situation in the Premier League, for instance, I'm almost certain that the VAR would have stepped in. Mind you, it's against Arsenal, so you never know. But I'm almost certain that the VAR would have stepped in and ruled the goal out. So for that reason, I don't want to make too much of it. But while I'm not playing the blame game here, I think there is something that we can take away from this. I think there's something that specifically Miles Lewis-Skelly can take away from this. We've seen him a lot since he's broken into the team, sort of receive the ball and seek to kind of put his body in between himself and the defender so that he can lure a foul out of them. He does that a lot. And I know that this doesn't really matter because it's a preseason friendly. And I know that in an ideal world, someone checks it, someone looks at it, someone sees it for what it is and goes, no goal. And Mars Lewis-Skelly gets up, walks away from it, no damage done. But I think it serves as a little bit of a reminder to him that that's a really dangerous game to play in certain areas of the pitch. And I've said this about Lewis-Skelly before. I said it in the game against West Ham at the back end of last season where he made that silly mistake, similar situation, held onto the ball for too long, tried to draw a foul out of someone that never really came. And I know it wasn't Kudus that did it to him this time, but Kudus was on the pitch coincidentally today and up against him for large periods of that game. But again, not playing the blame game, but I think there's something he can take away from that. And that is, don't rely on winning a foul first and foremost. You know, you can't. And for Raya, like, he's got to make better decisions in terms of the passes that he plays. But in terms of his positioning, that's the position that he's asked to play. He is asked to be the sweeper keeper. He is instructed to be that. And so while I don't like it at times, and you've seen today what can happen when you get that wrong, that's a coaching issue. You know, and Arsenal will look at that, weigh that up and say, well, the risk is here, but the reward in terms of what that gives us in terms of our build-up play is much more. And that's why they choose to play that way. I'm not sure personally I agree with that, but that's what I'd imagine the thinking is behind the scenes with regards to the positions that he takes up. So again, on the goal, which ultimately decided the game, I don't think, you know, I want to stick the boot in on either one of our players too much because I don't think the goal stands under normal circumstances. I think both of them can learn something from that. And hopefully they do. You can make mistakes as long as you learn from them. Just thinking about what else I kind of want to cover off. Max Dowman, you know, came onto the pitch, looked bright again. Victor Gyökeres got onto the pitch, but didn't really have the time to make any impact. Did he? Teed up an effort, I think, for Zubimendi. That was about it. Touch inside the box. Teed up a teammate. Just circling back to Max Dowman very, very quickly. I've been really, really impressed with this young lad for a number of reasons. I feel like in the last week, we've talked about him loads. I've talked about him loads on the radio and on various other mediums as being a really, really exciting talent and really exciting prospect. I think the thing that I want to say about Max Dowman, and I did say this after he sort of blew us all away against Newcastle United, but I think it's worth mentioning again because today it was on display again, is that I really like the way he's kind of grown up in terms of his football. Like, you watch him at under 18s level, it's all too easy for him, right? He gets the ball, he dribbles past 1, 2, 3, 4, gets to the box, gets a shot off, and a lot of the time scores, and it's just all too damn easy for the kid, right? You bring him into the first team, and my worry was, is Max Dowman going to try and overdo it in terms of dribbling and taking people on? Because that's what he's used to doing on a weekly basis. And at 15 years old, you know, is he switched on enough to kind of realize that he needs to adapt his game? I know that's on the coaches as well to kind of give him that guidance and give him that information. But, you know, he has, for me, shown an incredible maturity because he has tweaked and altered his game to the point where he doesn't run into trouble. He did it once in the game today. He doesn't run into trouble or give up possession cheaply because he's trying to overdo it. But at the same time, he's not afraid to express himself when he thinks the moment's right. He's shown a really good ability at this age to judge the right, or like to judge what the right move is, what the right approach is in different situations. So yeah, really, really excited by Max Dowman. As always, you know, every time I see him, I'm impressed. I think he's been fabulous, and I look forward to seeing what he can do next season. But yeah, just to summarize, as I say, disjointed, lacked rhythm, lacked tempo, lacked intensity. As I said at the top, I expect patchy performances at this stage of pre-season. So it's not that, you know, I wanted to see us at tip-top form for 90 minutes. I don't think we even got a 10-minute period today of us looking good and looking in, like, sort of really threatening or in complete control of the game. And that was my frustration. To summarize, I've got concerns about the balance of the midfield. If Zubimendi doesn't play, I think he will play when the season comes around proper. So maybe that's not something to kind of dwell on. But I think it's about balance. And I think we only have the right balance when certain personnel play. And what I don't want us to be in is a situation where we're out of balance anytime one player is missing. You know, we need, I'm not going to say we need more midfielders, because we don't, and we're definitely not going to sign any more midfielders. But I had my reservations about the Norgaard signing, because I don't know that from that deep position where he's most likely to get his minutes, he's got the skill set that Zubimendi has, or that Thomas Partey or Jorginho had. And that's where that signing didn't really make as much sense to me as it maybe did to other people. I thought we saw that today. Martinelli was the big disappointment. More than Martinelli, though, the left side in general is a big disappointment. And we're a very right-sided leaning team. And, you know, when your right side is functioning brilliantly, that's great. But Saka was off it today. Let's not skip over that. He was. Ben White is looking like he's coming back to his best, but Martin Odegaard's not quite at it either. So, you know, if you're a right-sided leaning team and your right side is not in tip-top shape or form, and you got very little on the left in terms of an alternative, you can understand the frustration, can't you? Again, we're not going to go on too much about today's game, and we're not going to analyze it too deeply again. On the day of the match, less than an hour after the full-time whistle, I felt it was worth just sharing some thoughts on Arsenal's defeat out in Hong Kong at the hands of Tottenham Hotspur. We'll be back on Friday with another episode. I'll be joined by some guests as well. Really, really looking forward to having a more broader discussion about Arsenal as we ramp up our pre-season preparations. 2 friendlies to go before Arsenal head to Old Trafford to take on Manchester United on the opening weekend of the Premier League season. Thank you for being with me here. Thank you to everyone who tuned into the watch along as well. Really appreciate the love and support. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel as well if you're with us on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple, then please do leave us a review, or Spotify too. And if you want to check us out on Patreon, you can do so. You'll get access to all our episodes ad-free and access to our exclusive content. Until the next time, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful day. Goodbye. Up the Arsenal.